There's a quiet, unassuming hill in China's Shanxi province, and underneath it lies a secret that's been sealed for over 2 millennia. This is the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, and it has never been opened. Ancient texts tell tales of an underground palace filled with incredible treasures, a map of his entire empire with rivers of flowing mercury. The giant, man-made hill covering the tomb was a local landmark, but its real secrets were buried deep underground. And it might have stayed that way forever if not for pure dumb luck. What's actually inside the tomb is rumored to be even more amazing and a whole lot more dangerous. Most of what we know comes from one guy, Sima Qian, China's grand historian, who was writing about a century after the emperor died. For a long time, people wrote his descriptions off as fantasy. But now, science is making us take a second look. Sima Qian wrote that the central tomb is basically an underground palace, a massive complex filled with rare artifacts and wonderful treasure. He described replicas of palaces and halls, filled with all the fancy things an emperor would need to rule in the next life. The ceiling of the main chamber is said to be a map of the heavens, with pearls stitched in to represent the stars and constellations. Below it, the floor is a map of his empire of miniature China. And this is where the story gets really wild. He wrote that to recreate China's great rivers, like the Yangtze and the Yellow River, the builders used tons of liquid mercury, all set up to flow mechanically. For centuries that sounded crazy. But get this. Modern scientific surveys of the soil around the tomb mound have found mercury levels way higher than they should be. It's not definitive proof, but it gives serious credibility to those ancient stories. And the mercury wasn't the only thing to worry about. Sima Qian also wrote about booby traps, crossbows, rigged and ready to fire on anyone who tried to break in. A mechanical last line of defense for any grave robber who got past the ghost army. Some stories even talk about eternally burning candles made from man-fish fat, probably whale oil, designed to keep the emperor safe forever. In March of 1974, a few local farmers were trying to dig a well. The answer is a mix of legitimate fear, respect, and a heavy dose of scientific caution. First off, preservation. Archaeologists are terrified they were in the middle of a drought and desperate to find water. Instead, their shovels hit something hard. When they brushed the dirt away, they found the head of a man, beautifully made from terracotta clay. They had absolutely no idea what they just found. They had just scratched the surface of arguably the biggest archaeological find of the 20th century. Archaeologists swarmed the site, and what they started to uncover was just breathtaking. It wasn't just one statue, but an entire army frozen in time. Thousands of life-sized soldiers, standing in silent, perfect battle formation. They had found the legendary Terracotta Army, and deadly crossbows rigged to fire on their own, ready to kill any intruder who dared to enter. Spread out across several massive pits, they've uncovered an estimated 8,000 soldiers so far, and archaeologists are pretty sure there are more still waiting to be found. And here's the wild part. Every single soldier is unique. Their faces, their hair, their expressions, they all seem to be based on real individual soldiers from the emperor's actual army. You've got archers both kneeling and standing, looking like they're ready to let their arrows fly. You've got cavalrymen with their terracotta horses, and huge chariots that were once armed with real bronze weapons. You can even spot the generals by their fancy armor and confident poses. The detail is just mind-blowing. You can see the treads on the soles of their shoes, the individual rivets in their armor, and the carefully braided hair on their heads. But when they were first made, these soldiers weren't this dull, earthy color. They were painted in vibrant reds, blues, and purples. Tragically, the moment they were exposed to the dry air after 2,000 years underground, the ancient lacquer that held the paint just curled and flaked away in minutes, taking all those brilliant colors with it. And that very tragedy is a huge reason why archaeologists are so incredibly cautious today. The army was deliberately placed east of the emperor's tomb, a strategic move to guard him in the afterlife from the rival states he had conquered, which were all to the east. This whole incredible display was just the outer guard. It was the opening act, a statement of power that hinted at the splendors they were built to protect. And if the guards look this good, you can only imagine what's in the main event. With all our modern tech, why haven't we cracked open what might be the single greatest archaeological find in history? So why haven't we opened it? Well, the answer is a wild story of ambition, ancient legend, and a danger that is surprisingly real, even now. Hi, everyone, I'm your host. Let's dive in. Now, it's a little tricky to explain why this tomb is so extraordinary. You have to understand the man who built it. Qin Shi Huang wasn't just an emperor. He was a force of nature. Born Ying Zhang during a period of non-stop war, he took the throne of the Qin state. He was a unifier, yes, but also a brutal tyrant, and unleashed a military force that did what everyone thought was impossible. Had conquered all its rivals, unifying China for the very first time in 221 BCE. He was the one who standardized writing, money, and even measurements across the land, and ordered a massive network of roads built to connect his new empire. He also commissioned the very first version of what we now know as the Great Wall of China. But conquering the mortal world wasn't enough for him. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with one thing, living forever. He sent expeditions searching for a mythical elixir of life, with ships sailing east into the sunrise and missions heading deep into the mountains, all part of a desperate hunt to cheat death. And the irony is, most historians think this very obsession is what killed him. He was constantly downing these elixirs of life from his alchemists, but many of them were laced with mercury, a substance some believed could grant long life, but is actually a deadly poison. The very thing he hoped would make him immortal was probably poisoning him slowly. This terror of dying and his hunger to rule forever fueled his last and greatest project, a tomb unlike any other, a subterranean empire where he could reign for eternity. Construction on his mausoleum started when he was just a boy king and continued for 38 years. Ancient texts claim it involved 700,000 laborers, a mind-boggling number that may have been an exaggeration, but still points to a workforce on an unbelievable scale. It was designed to be a perfect, miniature version of his earthly empire, a palace for the afterlife that he could never be kicked out of. For hundreds of years, the emperor's final resting place was just a story, whispered from one dynasty to the next. The Terracotta Army isn't just a bunch of statues. It's a masterpiece of ancient art and military planning. But remember, the army is just the security detail. So with all these incredible stories and some science to back them up, the big question is obvious. Why haven't we opened it?